The crystal chandelier cast shadows across my reflection as I fastened the clasp of my grandmother's pearl necklace. 15 years of Turner family anniversary dinners, and I still felt like an intruder getting dressed in their guest room, the room they'd assigned me after deciding the master bedroom was too much responsibility for someone like me. My name is Remington, though most people in this house have called me far worse things when they thought I couldn't hear. Remington! Alex's voice boomed from downstairs. We're starting cocktails in 10 minutes. Don't be late. Don't be late. As if I'd ever been late to anything in my life, as if I hadn't spent the last 3 hours preparing their precious dinner while they lounged around discussing my latest financial mishaps. I smoothed my black dress. Conservative, expensive, boring. Everything they expected from the woman who'd somehow tricked their golden boy into marriage. The woman who couldn't be trusted with anything more complex than a grocery list. Coming, I called back, my voice honey sweet. The stairs creaked under my heels as I descended into the lion's den. Maureen stood in the foyer, resplendent in her emerald silk, directing the catering staff like a general commanding troops. There she is, she announced without looking at me. Bethany, doesn't she look adequate? Bethany glanced up from her phone, her smile sharp as broken glass. Oh, absolutely. Very thrifty chic. They laughed. The same laugh I'd heard 1,000 times before, always at my expense. Ladies, I said, forcing my lips into what I hoped passed for a smile. Everything looks beautiful, Marine. You've outdone yourself. Well, someone has to maintain standards in this family. Her eyes swept over me dismissively. Though I suppose we can't all have natural taste. Alex appeared at my elbow, his hand finding the small of my back in what anyone else might mistake for affection. I knew better. The grip was possessive, controlling. Mother's been working all day to make tonight special, he said, his voice carrying that familiar edge of warning. I hope you'll try to contribute appropriately. Of course. I kept my voice level. I live to contribute. Leonard emerged from his study, looking uncomfortable in his formal wear. He'd always been the quieter one, content to let Marine orchestrate their lives while he retreated into his books and business papers. But even he couldn't quite meet my eyes anymore. Pierce isn't here yet, he announced, checking his watch. Probably passed out somewhere, Bethany muttered. Or worse. Bethany? Maureen's voice carried a sharp rebuke. We don't discuss family business in front of the help. The catering staff pretended not to hear. I pretended the comment wasn't directed at me. He'll be here, Alex said. He knows better than to miss tonight. Tonight. They kept saying it like it held some special significance beyond their usual self congratulatory gathering, the way they exchanged glances when they thought I wasn't looking, the hushed phone conversations that stopped when I entered a room. Shall we move to the dining room? Maureen swept past me, her perfume a cloud of expensive roses and barely concealed disdain. I have a feeling tonight will be educational. We filed into the dining room like mourners at a funeral. The table gleamed under the soft lighting set with their finest china, the Waterford crystal that had belonged to Alex's grandmother, the silver that Maureen polished herself because she didn't trust anyone else to do it properly. I took my usual seat at the far end, the spot they'd assigned me years ago when they decided I needed to earn my place at the family table. From here, I could see everyone's faces, watch their expressions, catalog their tells. Before we begin, Maureen said, raising her wine glass, I'd like to propose a toast to family, to tradition, and to new beginnings. The glasses clinked together in a symphony of crystal and false sentiment. I sipped my wine and watched them over the rim, noting the way Bethany kept checking her phone, how Alex's jaw tightened when he looked at me, how Leonard stared at his plate like it held the secrets of the universe. You know, Maureen continued, settling into her chair with the satisfaction of a cat who'd cornered a mouse, I was just telling Regina earlier how much we all care about you, dear. How concerned we've been. Regina. The name meant nothing to me, but the way Maureen said it, like she was savoring a particularly delicious secret, made my skin crawl. That's very kind, I said carefully. Oh, it's more than kind, Bethany chimed in, her eyes bright with malicious glee. It's necessary. The servers began bringing out the first course, their movements efficient and silent. I cut into my salmon, chewing mechanically while my mind raced. Something was coming, something they'd planned without me, about me. We've been thinking, Alex said, his voice deceptively casual, that it might be time for you to get some professional guidance. Professional guidance? With your finances, dear, Maureen said, her smile razor thin. We know how challenging money management can be for someone with your background. My fork paused halfway to my mouth. My background? Well, you didn't exactly grow up with advantages, Bethany said, false sympathy dripping from every word. It's not your fault you don't understand how these things work. I set down my fork and reached for my water glass, buying time. 15 years of this. 15 years of being treated like a child, a burden, a charity case they'd graciously taken in. I appreciate your concern, I said finally. Good, Alex said, relief evident in his voice, because we've already made arrangements. The dining room fell silent except for the soft clink of silverware against china. I could feel them watching me, waiting for my reaction, probably hoping I'd break down or throw a tantrum they could use against me later. Instead, I smiled. How thoughtful of you all. After dinner, I climbed the stairs to my room, my mind spinning with possibilities. They thought they had me cornered, thought they'd finally found a way to control the last piece of my life they hadn't already claimed. I was reaching for my jewelry box when I saw it, a cream colored envelope on my pillow, my name written across it in unfamiliar handwriting. My hands trembled slightly as I tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a message that made my blood run cold. I know about your little secrets. We should talk. Soon. I stared at the note until the words blurred together. Someone knew. But knew what, exactly? And who had been in my room? A soft knock interrupted my spiraling thoughts. Remington? Alex's voice carried through the door. We're having after dinner drinks in the library. Mother wants you to join us. Of course she did. I crumpled the note and shoved it into my jewelry box. Coming, I called out, checking my reflection one last time. Game face on. The library smelled of leather and Leonard's pipe tobacco. Everyone had gathered around the fireplace, everyone except Pierce, who still hadn't shown. Maureen sat in her throne like armchair, a brandy snifter balanced delicately in her manicured fingers. There you are, dear, she said as I entered. We have a surprise for you. Bethany practically vibrated with excitement beside the mantelpiece. Alex gestured to an empty chair, not the comfortable one near the fire, but the straight backed wooden chair they usually reserved for scolding the grandchildren. Please, sit, he said. I perched on the edge of the chair, hands folded in my lap like a schoolgirl called to the principal's office. Now, Maureen began, we've been discussing your situation. My situation? Your spending habits, dear. Bethany's voice dripped with false concern. The credit card bills, the online shopping, those mysterious cash withdrawals. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I kept my expression neutral. I don't understand. Of course you don't, Alex said, moving to stand behind my chair. His hands landed on my shoulders, heavy and possessive. That's why we're here to help. Leonard cleared his throat from his corner chair. We've brought in a professional. As if on cue, the library door opened. A woman in her 30s entered, her blonde hair pulled back in a severe bun, carrying a leather portfolio that screamed expensive efficiency. Remington, Maureen said with obvious satisfaction. I'd like you to meet Regina. She's a financial planner who specializes in challenging cases. Regina extended her hand with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. It's wonderful to meet you, Remington. I've heard so much about you. I shook her hand, noting the way her gaze flicked to Bethany for just a moment. Likewise. Regina comes highly recommended, Alex said, his grip on my shoulders tightening. She's helped several families in our social circle with similar difficulties. What kind of difficulties? I asked. Regina settled into the chair across from me, opening her portfolio with practiced efficiency. Impulse control issues, lack of financial literacy, the inability to distinguish between wants and needs. Each word hit like a slap. I felt heat rise in my cheeks, but forced myself to remain calm. I see. We've already reviewed your spending patterns, Regina continued, pulling out a thick folder. The frequent online purchases, the cash withdrawals that don't align with household expenses, the apparent inability to stick to a budget. I wasn't aware I had a budget, I said quietly. Maureen laughed, the sound sharp and brittle. Oh, darling, you've had an allowance for 15 years. The fact that you've never learned to manage it properly is precisely the problem. An allowance. I repeated the words slowly, tasting their bitterness. A generous one, Bethany added quickly. More than most women in your position would receive. My position? As a dependent, Regina said matter of factly, consulting her notes. Someone who contributes primarily through domestic duties rather than financial income. The room fell silent except for the crackling fire. I could feel them all watching me, waiting for me to break, to cry, to beg for their forgiveness and understanding. Instead, I smiled. How thoughtful of you all to be so concerned about my welfare. Alex's hands relaxed slightly on my shoulders. We knew you'd understand once we explained it properly. Regina has prepared a comprehensive plan, Maureen said, leaning forward with obvious relish. Complete financial oversight, structured spending guidelines, and regular check ins to ensure compliance. Compliance, I repeated. It's really for your own good, Bethany said, though she couldn't quite hide her smirk. Some people just aren't equipped to handle financial responsibility. Regina pulled out another document. I'll need you to sign these authorization forms. They'll give me access to your accounts so I can implement the new system immediately. She slid the papers across the coffee table. I stared down at them, the legal language swimming before my eyes. Words like power of attorney and financial guardianship jumped out at me. Tonight? I asked. No time like the present, Alex said cheerfully. We've already wasted too much time enabling your habits. I picked up the pen Regina offered, my hand steady despite the rage building in my chest. And if I refuse? The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Well, Maureen said slowly, that would be unfortunate for everyone involved. We're a family, Leonard added quietly from his corner. Families take care of each other. Sometimes that means making difficult decisions. For the greater good, Bethany chimed in. I looked around the room at their expectant faces. 15 years of marriage, and this was what it had come to, a financial intervention orchestrated by people who saw me as nothing more than a burden to be managed. I need a moment to read through these, I said finally. Of course, Regina said smoothly. Take all the time you need. But as she spoke, I caught her leaning toward Bethany, her voice dropping to a whisper. The surprise after dessert went perfectly. She has no idea what's coming. Bethany's answering giggle was barely audible, but I heard it. I heard everything. I bent over the papers, pretending to read while my mind raced. They thought they had me trapped, thought they'd finally found a way to strip away the last shred of my independence. They had no idea how wrong they were. These seem very thorough, I said, looking up at Regina with what I hoped passed for gratitude. You've clearly put a lot of thought into this. It's what I do, she replied, but her attention was already drifting back to Bethany. I signed the papers with a flourish, handing them back to Regina with a smile that felt like glass cutting my lips. There, I said. All done. The collective sigh of relief was almost audible. Alex squeezed my shoulders approvingly. You've made the right choice, Maureen said, raising her brandy in a mock toast. To new beginnings. To new beginnings, I echoed, my phone buzzing with a text message in my pocket. I didn't need to look to know who it was from. Amy always had perfect timing. The celebration continued around me as I excused myself to use the powder room. My phone burned in my pocket, Amy's message waiting. I locked the door and pulled it out with shaking fingers. Everything ready on my end. Just say the word. A. I stared at the screen, my reflection ghost-like in the ornate mirror above the sink. 15 years. It had taken 15 years to get to this moment. A sharp knock interrupted my thoughts. Remington? Bethany's voice carried through the door. You've been in there forever. Are you all right? Just freshening up, I called back, quickly deleting Amy's message. Be right out. When I returned to the library, Regina was packing up her portfolio with obvious satisfaction. The signed papers were nowhere to be seen, probably already tucked away in her briefcase like a trophy. All settled then, Alex said, wrapping his arm around my waist in a gesture that looked affectionate but felt like a shackle. I'm proud of you for being so mature about this. Mature. Like I was a child who'd finally learned to share her toys. We should celebrate, Maureen announced, rising from her chair with theatrical flair. Leonard, open that bottle of champagne we've been saving. What are we celebrating exactly? I asked. Your fresh start, dear, she replied, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. Your chance to finally become the woman this family needs you to be. Leonard disappeared into the kitchen, returning with a bottle of Dom Perignon and crystal flutes. The cork popped with a sound like a gunshot, making me jump. To Remington, Maureen said, raising her glass high. May she finally learn the value of living within her means. To Remington, the others echoed, their voices a chorus of barely concealed triumph. I lifted my glass, the champagne bubbles catching the firelight like tiny diamonds. To family, I said quietly, and to getting exactly what we deserve. Something in my tone made Alex glance at me sharply, but before he could comment, the front door slammed open with enough force to rattle the windows. Sorry I'm late! Pierce's voice boomed through the house, followed by the sound of stumbling footsteps. Traffic was murder, and then I had to stop for gas, and he appeared in the library doorway, his tie askew and his hair disheveled, but his eyes were clear, sharper than I'd seen them in months. Pierce, Maureen said icily, how kind of you to join us. Wouldn't miss it for the world, Mother. He surveyed the room, taking in our champagne glasses and the obvious tension. What's the occasion? Did someone die? We were just helping Remington with some financial planning, Alex said carefully. Pierce's gaze found mine across the room. Financial planning? How thoughtful. Regina here is going to help her get organized, Bethany said, gesturing to the blonde woman who was now checking her phone with obvious impatience. Regina. Pierce studied her with the intensity of someone who'd learned to read people out of necessity. Don't think we've met. She's a professional, Maureen said dismissively. Someone who understands how to handle delicate situations. Delicate situations? Pierce moved to the bar cart, pouring himself 3 fingers of whiskey. Is that what we're calling it? The room went quiet except for the clink of ice against glass. Pierce, Leonard warned from his corner. What? I'm just trying to understand. Pierce took a long sip of his drink, never taking his eyes off Regina. See, I know a lot of financial planners in this city. Comes with the territory when you're trying to get your life together, but I've never heard of you. Regina's smile faltered slightly. I work primarily through referrals. Referrals? Pierce nodded slowly. From who? Pierce, that's enough, Alex snapped. Is it? Pierce turned to face his brother, and I saw something I'd never seen before. Pierce completely sober and absolutely furious, because I tried to warn you about this months ago, and you told me to mind my own business. Warn him about what? I asked, though I already suspected the answer. Pierce looked at me with something that might have been pity. About the fact that Regina here isn't a financial planner. She's Bethany's sorority sister from college. The champagne glass slipped from Bethany's fingers, shattering against the hardwood floor in an explosion of crystal and golden liquid. Pierce! Maureen's voice cracked like a whip. What? He spread his arms wide, whiskey sloshing in his glass. It's true, isn't it? Regina works in marketing for some tech startup downtown, has for the past 5 years. I looked her up after Bethany mentioned bringing in a professional to handle the Remington situation. Regina's face had gone pale, her professional composure cracking. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Has there? Pierce moved closer to her, his voice deadly quiet. Because those papers Remington just signed, the ones giving you power of attorney over her finances, those are real legal documents, aren't they? Of course they're real, Alex said, but his voice lacked conviction. Real documents. Fake credentials. Pierce shook his head. Do you people even hear yourselves? I stood up slowly, the room spinning slightly around me. The papers I signed are completely legal and binding, Regina said quickly, clutching her briefcase like a shield, regardless of any misunderstandings about my background. Misunderstandings. The word tasted like poison in my mouth. Maureen stepped forward, her face flushed with anger and embarrassment. Pierce, you're drunk and you're making a scene. I'm stone cold sober, Mother, for the first time in months. He turned to me, his expression almost gentle. I'm sorry, Remington. I'd tried to tell them this was going too far, but they wouldn't listen. Going too far? Bethany had found her voice again, though it came out as a squeak. We were trying to help her. Help her? Pierce laughed, the sound bitter and sharp. You were trying to steal from her. That's enough, Alex roared, his face purple with rage. Get out, Pierce. Now! Gladly. Pierce finished his whiskey in one gulp and set the glass down with deliberate care. But first, I have something to say to Remington. He walked over to where I stood, frozen by my chair, leaning down to whisper in my ear. Whatever you're planning, he said so quietly only I could hear. Do it tonight. before they figure out how to make those papers stick. Then he straightened up, kissed my cheek with surprising gentleness, and walked out of the room without another word. The front door slammed behind him, leaving us all in stunned silence. Regina was the first to recover. Well, she said, forcing brightness into her voice, family dynamics can be complicated, but the important thing is that we're all on the same page now. I looked around the room at their faces, Alex's barely controlled fury, Maureen's cold calculation, Bethany's guilty panic, Leonard's uncomfortable silence. Yes, I said softly. I think we finally are. The silence stretched until Regina cleared her throat awkwardly. Perhaps we should call it a night, she said, snapping her briefcase shut. I'll be in touch tomorrow to discuss implementation. Of course, Maureen said, her composure returning like armor sliding back into place. Bethany, why don't you walk Regina out? Bethany nodded eagerly, clearly desperate to escape the tension. Great idea. Regina, we should grab coffee soon and catch up properly. They hurried out together, their whispered conversation fading as they moved toward the front door. I caught fragments. Didn't expect Pierce to. And should have warned you about. Alex poured himself another drink, his movements sharp and angry. Pierce is getting worse. We might need to consider intervention options. He's been clean for 3 months, I said quietly. Clean? Alex laughed harshly. Did you see him tonight? He was obviously sober, I finished. He was completely sober, Alex. And he was right. Leonard shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Right about what? About Regina. About all of this. I gestured around the room. You hired your daughter's college friend to pretend to be a financial planner so you could steal my money. Steal is a strong word, Maureen said coolly. We prefer manage responsibly. With forged credentials and fraudulent documents? The documents are perfectly legal, Alex snapped. Regina may not be a traditional financial planner, but she's perfectly capable of. Of what? Embezzling? Because that's what this is. I stood up, my legs surprisingly steady. You've committed fraud. Maureen waved her hand dismissively. Don't be dramatic, dear. No one's committed anything except an act of love. Love? The word came out as a laugh. Is that what you call 15 years of humiliation and control? We've given you everything, Alex said, his voice rising. A home, a family, a lifestyle you never could have afforded on your own. A home I'm not allowed to decorate, a family that treats me like hired help, a lifestyle funded by an allowance you dole out like I'm your pet. Leonard cleared his throat. Perhaps we should all take a step back. No. I turned to face him directly. You want to talk about money? Let's talk about money. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through my banking app with fingers that no longer trembled. Did you know that your allowance has been the same amount for 10 years? $5,000 a month deposited like clockwork into an account I'm not supposed to touch except for household expenses. It's a generous amount, Maureen said stiffly. It is, especially when you don't spend it. I turned the phone screen toward them. Would you like to know what $5,000 a month becomes when you invest it properly for a decade? Alex moved closer, squinting at the screen. His face went white. That can't be right. Oh, it's right. Compound interest is a beautiful thing when you actually understand how it works. I scrolled through more screens. Stock portfolios, index funds, a few carefully chosen real estate investments. Real estate? Leonard's voice was barely a whisper. Small properties at first, a duplex here, a rental there, nothing too ambitious. I smiled, feeling something cold and sharp unfurling in my chest. But then opportunities started presenting themselves. Maureen had gone very still. What kind of opportunities? Well, for instance, when someone puts their house up as collateral for a business loan and then defaults on the payments, the property goes to auction, usually at a significant discount. The color drained from Leonard's face. You didn't. I did. 2 years ago, when your precious antique business hit that rough patch and you needed quick cash, you put this house up as collateral, remember? Thought you could pay it back before anyone noticed. We did pay it back, Alex said, but his voice lacked conviction. You paid back the loan. But the house had already been sold to cover the initial default. The bank was very efficient about it. I scrolled to another screen. Would you like to see the deed? Leonard stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the hardwood. That's impossible. We would have been notified. You were. The notices went to your business address, the one that was already closed by then. Very unfortunate timing. Maureen's brandy snifter hit the floor, joining the champagne glass in a symphony of shattered crystal. You're lying, she whispered. Am I? I pulled up another document on my phone. Lighthouse Holdings, LLC. That's the company that purchased this property. Would you like to know who owns Lighthouse Holdings? The room was so quiet I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway. This is our home, Maureen said, her voice breaking slightly. We've lived here for 30 years. And you can continue living here as tenants. The rent is very reasonable, only 4,000 a month. I've been covering it myself as a gift to the family. Alex lunged forward, grabbing for my phone. You can't do this. This is fraud. This is legal. I stepped back, keeping the phone out of his reach. Every transaction properly documented, every purchase above board. I even paid taxes on the capital gains. But how? Leonard sank back into his chair, looking suddenly ancient. How did you know about the auction? I have friends you don't know about. People who understand that information is power. I slipped my phone back into my pocket. People who've been watching and waiting for the right moment. What friends? Maureen demanded, some of her fire returning. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text. I glanced at it and smiled. Actually, you're about to meet one of them. The doorbell rang, its chimes echoing through the house like a funeral dirge. Expecting someone? Alex asked, his voice tight with suspicion. As a matter of fact, yes. I walked toward the library door, pausing to look back at their stunned faces. I think it's time we had a proper family meeting, one where everyone knows exactly where they stand. The doorbell rang again, more insistently this time. Aren't you going to answer that? I asked sweetly. Leonard struggled to his feet, moving like a man walking to his execution. We could hear him in the foyer, the creak of the heavy front door, the murmur of voices. When he returned, his face was gray as ash. There's someone here to see you, Remington, he said quietly. She says her name is Amy, and she has some papers for you to sign. I smiled, feeling the last piece of my carefully constructed plan sliding into place. How wonderful. Please, show her in. I think it's time my family met my business partner. Amy walked into the library like she owned the place, which in a way, she did. Her red hair was pulled back in a professional bun, and she carried a leather messenger bag that looked expensive enough to make Maureen wince. Sorry I'm late, she said, kissing my cheek like we were old friends meeting for lunch. Traffic was murder. Amy, I'd like you to meet my family. I gestured around the room. Alex, my husband, Maureen and Leonard, my in laws. You remember Bethany from the photos? Bethany had returned from walking Regina out and now stood frozen in the doorway, her mouth slightly open. Charming, Amy said, her smile sharp as a blade. I can see why you've spoken of them so fondly. Business partner? Alex's voice cracked slightly on the words. Among other things. Amy settled into the chair Regina had vacated, crossing her legs with casual confidence. I'm also Remington's financial advisor, her real estate agent, and her oldest friend. We weren't aware Remington had any business interests, Maureen said, her voice dripping with disdain. Oh, she has many interests, don't you, darling? Amy opened her messenger bag and pulled out a thick folder. Shall we get started? Started with what? Leonard asked, though he looked like he already knew he didn't want to hear the answer. The transition, of course. Amy spread several documents across the coffee table. Now that Remington has decided to take a more active role in managing her properties, there are some changes that need to be implemented. Her properties? Bethany squeaked. Didn't she tell you? Amy looked around the room with mock surprise. Remington owns quite an impressive portfolio. This house, of course, the building where Leonard's antique shop used to be, that lovely little duplex where Bethany's been living rent-free for the past 3 years. Bethany's face went white. That's impossible. Is it? Amy pulled out another document. Sunrise Properties, LLC, another one of Remington's companies. The rent on your place is supposed to be $2,500 a month, but Remington's been covering it as a family gift. This is insane, Alex said, but his voice lacked conviction. Remington doesn't have companies. She doesn't even have a job. Doesn't she? Amy smiled. Tell me, Alex, what do you think your wife does all day while you're at the office? She manages the household, shops, lunches with friends. Friends like me, Amy said pleasantly. We do have lovely lunches. usually to discuss her latest acquisitions or review quarterly reports. I watched their faces as the reality began to sink in. 15 years of dismissing me as a vapid housewife, and they were finally seeing the truth. The quarterly reports are particularly interesting, Amy continued, pulling out a bound document. Would you like to see this year's numbers? No, Maureen said quickly. This is all very fascinating. But I think there's been some misunderstanding. Has there? Amy's voice turned cold. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you just tried to defraud my business partner out of her assets using fake credentials and forged documents. They weren't forged, Alex protested. Regina is perfectly qualified to. Regina Martinez graduated from state with a degree in marketing, Amy interrupted. She's never held a financial license of any kind. I checked. The room fell silent except for the sound of Bethany's ragged breathing. How long have you known? Leonard asked quietly. About Regina? Since this morning when Remington called me. Amy glanced at her watch. About everything else? 15 years. I've been helping Remington build her portfolio since the day she married into this family. That's impossible, Maureen said, but her voice was weak. Is it? Did you ever wonder why Remington never complained about her allowance, never asked for more money, never seemed to struggle financially despite your generous household budget? I remembered those early years, learning to navigate their world while secretly building my own. The late nights studying market reports, the careful research into every investment, the slow accumulation of power they never saw coming. She was planning this from the beginning, Alex said, his voice filled with something between admiration and horror. Planning what? Amy asked innocently. Building financial security? Creating a safety net? Investing wisely instead of spending frivolously? Planning to steal our home? Maureen snapped. Your home? Amy laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. The home you put up as collateral and then lost when you couldn't make the payments? The home that was legally sold at auction to the highest bidder? We didn't know. You didn't know because you didn't want to know. You were too busy playing your little power games to pay attention to the real world. Amy pulled out another document, this one official looking with a government seal. This is a notice of lease termination, she said calmly, effective in 30 days. Lease termination? Leonard's voice was barely a whisper. The current lease agreement was a courtesy arrangement, Amy explained. Month to month, no security deposit required. Very generous terms considering. You can't just throw us out, Bethany said, finding her voice. We have rights. You have the rights of any tenant, Amy agreed. 30 days' notice, which you're receiving now. After that, you'll need to find alternative housing arrangements. This is our family home, Maureen said, her composure finally cracking. Our children grew up here. Our grandchildren will be welcome to visit, I said quietly, once you've found a new place to live. Alex turned to stare at me, his face a mask of betrayal and rage. How could you do this to us? We're your family. Are you? I asked. Because family doesn't humiliate each other at dinner parties. Family doesn't hire fake financial planners to steal each other's money. Family doesn't treat each other like burdens to be managed. We gave you everything, Maureen whispered. You gave me an allowance and a list of rules. You gave me a bedroom in the guest wing and a seat at the far end of the table. You gave me 15 years of being treated like a charity case you were too polite to refuse. Amy stood up, gathering her documents with efficient movements. I think that covers everything for tonight. Remington, I'll need your signature on the lease termination notice. I took the pen she offered, my hand steady as I signed my name with a flourish. There, I said, handing the document back. All official. Amy tucked the papers back into her bag and headed for the door. I'll be in touch about the other properties. We should discuss your plans for the antique shop building. I have several interested commercial tenants. She paused at the doorway, looking back at the stunned faces around the room. Oh, and Remington? That other matter we discussed? The one about the anonymous note? My blood ran cold. What about it? Amy smiled, but there was no warmth in it. I think you'll find that situation has resolved itself. Some secrets have a way of working themselves out. She left, her heels clicking against the hardwood as she walked away. The front door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded like a gunshot in the silence. I looked around the room at my family, my husband, my in laws, my sister in law, and saw nothing but strangers staring back at me. Well, I said finally, I think that went rather well. The silence stretched until Alex exploded. Rather well? He shot to his feet, his face purple with rage. You just stole our house and you think it went well? I didn't steal anything, I said calmly. I bought it, fair and square, at a legal auction. Using our money? Maureen shrieked, her careful composure completely shattered. Money we gave you! Money you gave me to do with as I pleased. An allowance, remember? No strings attached, no oversight required. I smoothed my dress and sat back down. I chose to invest it wisely instead of spending it on shoes and handbags like you expected. Leonard buried his face in his hands. 30 years. We've lived here for 30 years. And you can find somewhere lovely to live for the next 30, I replied. I hear there are some nice apartments downtown. Very modern, much easier to maintain than this old place. You vindictive bitch, Bethany snarled, stepping forward like she wanted to hit me. How dare you? How dare I what? Use my own money to secure my future, build a business while you all dismissed me as a brainless housewife? I stood up to face her. Or how dare I survive 15 years of your family's abuse? Abuse? Alex laughed harshly. We gave you everything: designer clothes, jewelry, vacations. A gilded cage is still a cage, Alex. We loved you, Maureen said, tears streaming down her cheeks. We welcomed you into our family. You tolerated me. There's a difference. I walked to the mantelpiece, running my fingers along the marble edge. Do you remember my first Christmas here, Maureen? Her face went pale. I spent weeks planning the perfect dinner. I researched your family recipes, practiced for hours. I wanted so badly to fit in, to make you proud. I turned to face her. And you threw it all away because the turkey was 10 minutes late. That was that was the moment I realized I would never be good enough for this family, no matter what I did, how hard I tried. I would always be the outsider who trapped your precious son into marriage. You did trap him, Bethany spat. Everyone knows you got pregnant on purpose. The words hit like a physical blow. I felt the old pain rise up sharp and fresh as the day it happened. I lost that baby, I said quietly, at 12 weeks. But you already know that, don't you, Bethany? Her face crumpled. Remington, I didn't mean. Yes, you did. You've all been throwing that in my face for 15 years. The baby I lost, the marriage you think was a mistake, the woman you believe isn't worthy of your family name. Alex moved toward me, his expression shifting from anger to something that might have been regret. Rem, we never meant. Don't. I held up my hand to stop him. Don't you dare try to rewrite history now. Not when you spent this entire evening trying to steal my money with a fake financial planner. We were trying to help you, Leonard said weakly. Help me? Or help yourselves to my assets? I pulled out my phone again. Should I show them the rest, Amy? I hadn't realized she'd returned until I heard her voice from the doorway. Show them what? She asked, stepping back into the room with a manila envelope in her hands. The other properties, the investments, the full scope of what they're losing. Amy smiled and handed me the envelope. Actually, I think they should see this first. I opened it, my hands trembling slightly as I pulled out a stack of photographs. My blood turned to ice. What is it? Alex demanded. I held up the first photo, a clear shot of him leaving a downtown hotel with a woman who definitely wasn't me. The timestamp showed it was taken 3 weeks ago. Interesting, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Amy, where did you get these? A private investigator I hired 6 months ago. Very thorough work. She pulled out more photos. There are quite a few more. Different women, different hotels. Very consistent pattern. Alex's face went white. Those aren't what they look like. Aren't they? I flipped through the images, each one a knife to whatever was left of my heart. This one's particularly clear. The Marriott downtown, last Tuesday. Wasn't that the night you said you were working late? Remington, please. And this woman. I held up another photo. She looks familiar. Isn't this your secretary, Alex? The one you said was just a friend? Maureen sank into her chair, her face gray. Alex, tell me this isn't true. It's not what you think, he said desperately. These are taken out of context. Context? I laughed, the sound bitter and sharp. What context makes cheating on your wife acceptable? You've been distant, he said, his voice rising. Cold, unavailable. What was I supposed to do? Be a husband? Be faithful? Be the man I thought I married? I threw the photos on the coffee table where they scattered like fallen leaves, but I suppose that was too much to ask. Bethany picked up one of the photos, her face twisting with disgust. Alex, how could you be so stupid? Stupid? Amy laughed. Oh, this gets better. Tell them about the credit cards, Alex. His face went from white to green. What credit cards? The ones you opened in Remington's name. The ones you've been using to pay for your little affairs hotel rooms, jewelry, expensive dinners. Amy pulled out another document. $47,000 in debt, all in your wife's name. That's identity theft, I said quietly. A federal crime. Now wait just a minute, Leonard said, struggling to his feet. This has gone far enough. We're family. We can work this out. Work it out? I turned to face him. Your son has been cheating on me for years and stealing my identity to pay for it. Your wife just tried to defraud me with a fake financial planner. Your daughter has been living rent free in my property while treating me like garbage. What exactly is there to work out? We can go to counseling, Alex said desperately. Marriage therapy. I'll stop seeing. Stop. I held up my hand. Just stop. It's too late for that. I walked to the window, looking out at the manicured gardens I'd maintained for 15 years, the rose bushes I'd planted and tended, the life I'd built in a house that was never really mine until now. You want to know the truth? I said without turning around. I've been planning this for 5 years, ever since I found the first hotel receipt in your jacket pocket, Alex. Ever since I realized that no matter how hard I tried, I would never be anything more than a convenient wife to you. 5 years, Maureen whispered. 5 years of careful planning, building my portfolio, establishing my companies, positioning myself for this moment. I turned back to face them. And you made it so easy. You were so convinced I was stupid, so certain I couldn't possibly understand money or business or anything that mattered. We underestimated you, Leonard said quietly. You dismissed me, all of you, and now you're going to pay the price. Amy cleared her throat. Actually, there's one more thing. She pulled out a final document, this one bearing the seal of a law firm. Divorce papers, she announced, already filed. Remington will be keeping all assets acquired during the marriage, which, thanks to the prenup Alex insisted on, includes everything she purchased with her own money. Alex stared at the papers like they were a snake about to strike. The prenup protects both of us. It protects your family money from me, I corrected. It doesn't protect my money from you, and since I can prove you've been stealing from me, I shrugged. Well, let's just say your lawyer is going to have a very difficult time. The room fell silent except for the sound of Maureen's quiet sobbing. 30 days, I said finally. You have 30 days to find somewhere else to live. After that, I'll be changing the locks. The silence shattered like glass when Alex lunged forward, grabbing the divorce papers from Amy's hands. You can't do this! He ripped them in half, the sound sharp and violent. 15 years of marriage doesn't just end because you're having some kind of breakdown? Breakdown? I laughed, the sound echoing off the library walls. Alex, I've never been more clear headed in my life. This is insane! He threw the torn papers at my feet. You're destroying our family over what? Money? Some stupid grudge? Stupid grudge? My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. You've been cheating on me for years. You stole my identity. You all just tried to rob me blind. We were trying to help you, Maureen shrieked, mascara streaming down her cheeks. You were spending money like water. We thought. You thought I was an idiot. You thought I was weak. You thought I would just sit there and take it forever. I stepped over the torn papers. You were wrong. Bethany had been quiet, but now she exploded. You vindictive witch! You planned this whole thing. You've been lying to us for years. Lying about what? About being smarter than you gave me credit for? About having more backbone than you thought? I turned to face her. Or are you upset because you're about to lose your free apartment? That apartment was a gift. That apartment was charity. Just like everything else in this family. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts. Speaking of which, I should probably call my other tenants, let them know about the rent increases. Other tenants? Leonard's voice was barely a whisper. The beach house in Malibu, the ski lodge in Aspen, the penthouse downtown. I smiled sweetly. Did you really think I only owned this house? Alex's face went purple. Those are family properties. Were family properties. Past tense. I showed him my phone screen. Would you like to see the deeds? This is impossible, Maureen said, but her voice lacked conviction. You don't have that kind of money. Don't I? I scrolled through my banking app. 15 years of compound interest adds up quickly when you know what you're doing. But how? Bethany demanded. How did you even know about the auctions? The foreclosures? Before I could answer, the front door opened and Pierce stumbled back in, his tie completely undone now, his shirt wrinkled. Sorry, forgot my keys, he said, then stopped when he saw our faces. Whoa, did someone die? Pierce, Leonard said wearily, this isn't a good time. Actually, I said, it's a perfect time. Pierce, tell them about the conversation we had 6 months ago. Pierce looked around the room, taking in the torn papers, the scattered photographs, Amy's satisfied expression. Which conversation? He asked carefully. The one where you warned me about Regina. The one where you told me they were planning something. His face went pale. Remington, You tried to warn me, I continued. You said they were going to try to take control of my finances. You said I should protect myself. I was drunk, he said quietly. I didn't think you'd actually. Actually, what? Fight back? Stand up for myself? I walked over to him. You were the only one who treated me like a human being in this family, Pierce. The only one who saw what they were doing to me. What we were doing? Alex roared. We gave you everything! You gave me scraps! I whirled around to face him. You gave me an allowance like I was a child. You made me ask permission to buy groceries. You treated me like a servant in my own home. It was never your home, Maureen screamed, rising from her chair like an avenging angel. This house has been in our family for generations. You have no right. I have every right. I bought it, I own it, and in 30 days you'll be out of it. We'll fight this, Alex said, his voice deadly quiet. We'll take you to court. We'll prove you manipulated us, stole from us. With what money? Amy interrupted sweetly. Because according to these financial records, the Turner family is broke. The room went dead silent. What? Leonard whispered. Amy pulled out another folder. The antique business failed 2 years ago. The investment portfolio Leonard managed? Gone. The trust fund that was supposed to support the family? Depleted. That's impossible, Bethany said, but her voice shook. Is it? Leonard, when was the last time you actually looked at your bank statements? Leonard sank into his chair, his face gray. I. Maureen handles the finances. Maureen handles the spending, Amy corrected. The country club memberships, the designer clothes, the expensive vacations, but she doesn't handle the earning. We have investments, Maureen said desperately. Property, stocks, had, Amy corrected. Past tense. Most of it was sold off over the past 5 years to maintain your lifestyle. But the house, Alex started, was mortgaged to the hilt. That's why it went to auction when Leonard defaulted on the business loan. Amy closed the folder with a snap. You've been living on borrowed time and borrowed money for years. Pierce let out a low whistle. Holy shit! Language, Maureen said automatically, then seemed to realize how ridiculous that sounded given the circumstances. So let me get this straight, Pierce said, looking around the room. You're all broke. Remington owns everything, and you just tried to steal her money with a fake financial planner? It wasn't stealing, Bethany protested weakly. What would you call it? He asked. The front door chimed again, and we all turned to see a uniformed police officer standing in the doorway. Sorry to interrupt, he said, but I'm looking for Regina Martinez. We have a warrant for her arrest. Amy smiled. I believe she left about an hour ago, but I have her address if you need it. Arrest? Alex's voice cracked. For what? Fraud, identity theft, conspiracy to commit grand larceny. The officer consulted his notepad. We've been investigating her for months. Apparently, this isn't the first family she's targeted. Bethany made a sound like a wounded animal. Ma'am, the officer said, looking at her, we're going to need to speak with you as well. You're listed as an accomplice in the complaint. Complaint? Maureen whispered. Filed this afternoon by. He checked his notes again. Mrs. Remington Turner. Very detailed documentation. Very thorough. I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. Officer, they're all here if you need to speak with them. Actually, we'll need them to come down to the station. All of them. This is ridiculous, Alex shouted. We're the victims here. Are you? The officer asked mildly. Because from what I can see, you tried to defraud your wife using falsified credentials and forged documents. That's a felony. Leonard stood up slowly, his hands shaking. Officer, I think there's been a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, sir. We have recorded phone conversations, email evidence, and witness testimony. The officer looked around the room. I'm going to need you all to come with me. As they filed out one by one, Alex raging, Maureen weeping, Bethany silent with shock, Pierce paused beside me. You know, he said quietly, I always wondered what would happen if you finally fought back. And? He smiled, and for the first time in years, it reached his eyes. It's even better than I imagined. Then he was gone, leaving me alone with Amy in the wreckage of my marriage and my family. Well, Amy said, gathering up her papers, that was dramatic. I looked around the library, my library now, at the scattered photographs and torn papers, the empty glasses and broken crystal. Yes, I said quietly, it was. The house felt different without their voices echoing through the halls. I walked from room to room, my heels clicking against the hardwood floors that were finally, truly mine. Amy found me in the kitchen, staring out at the garden where the roses were beginning to bloom. The police said it'll take a few hours to process them all, she said, setting her briefcase on the marble counter. Regina's already talking. Apparently, she's done this to 3 other families. And Bethany? Accessory charges? She'll probably get probation if she cooperates. Amy poured herself a glass of water from the tap. Alex and Maureen are looking at fraud charges. Leonard might avoid jail time due to his age, but his reputation is finished. I nodded, feeling strangely empty. Good. Is it? Amy studied my face. You don't look like someone who just won. Before I could answer, the kitchen door swung open and Pierce walked in, looking more sober than I'd seen him in years. They let me go, he said simply. Turns out being the family screw up has its advantages. No one expected me to be involved in financial planning. What will you do now? I asked. He shrugged. Find my own place, I guess. Get a job. Try to stay clean. He paused. What about you? I don't know. The admission surprised me. I spent so long planning this moment, I never thought about what came after. Amy's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and frowned. That's odd. What? I just got an offer on the house. Full asking price, cash deal, immediate closing. I haven't put it on the market yet. I know. That's what makes it odd. Amy showed me her phone. The buyer wants to remain anonymous, but they're offering 3 million above market value. Pierce whistled low. Someone really wants this place. A chill ran down my spine. Did they say why? No, but Amy hesitated. There's something else. Remember that note you found in your room? The one about your secrets? My blood turned to ice. What about it? I did some digging. The handwriting analysis came back. She pulled out a manila envelope. It matches samples from someone in your family. Which family member? Amy opened the envelope and handed me a photograph. It showed the note next to several handwriting samples, each one labeled with a name. The match was clear. Leonard? I whispered. He knew, Pierce said quietly. He knew what you were doing all along. The kitchen door opened again, and Leonard himself walked in, looking older than his 68 years. The police had released him on his own recognizance. I thought I might find you here, he said. You wrote the note, I said. It wasn't a question. He nodded, pulling out a chair at the kitchen table. I've known about your investments for 3 years. I saw the paperwork when you bought the antique shop building. Why didn't you say anything? Because you deserved better than what we gave you. His voice was quiet. Tired. I watched my wife and children treat you like garbage for 15 years, and I did nothing to stop it. You could have warned them, Amy said. Warned them about what? That the woman they'd been abusing was smarter than all of them combined? That she was building an empire while they played their petty games? Leonard shook his head. They wouldn't have listened. They never listened. So you just watched? I watched, and I waited. And when I saw them planning that ridiculous intervention with Regina, I knew it was time. Pierce leaned against the counter. Time for what? Time for consequences. Leonard looked directly at me. You want to know who made the offer on the house? My heart stopped. You? Me, with money I've been hiding from Maureen for 20 years, money she never knew existed. He smiled sadly. I may be old, but I'm not stupid. I knew this day would come eventually. Why? I asked. Because you're the daughter I never had. Because you loved my son when he didn't deserve it. Because you tried to be part of this family when we made it impossible. His eyes filled with tears. Because I owe you 15 years of apologies. The kitchen fell silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. I don't want your money, I said finally. It's not about the money. It's about giving you a choice. Leonard stood up slowly. You can sell me the house and walk away from all of this. Start fresh somewhere else, or, or you can keep it. Make it yours. Fill it with people who actually deserve you. I looked around the kitchen where I'd prepared countless meals for people who barely acknowledged my existence, the dining room where I'd sat at the far end of the table like an unwelcome guest, the library where they'd tried to steal my future. I think, I said slowly, I'll keep it. Leonard smiled. Good. It needs someone who understands what a home should be. Amy's phone buzzed again. The divorce papers are finalized. Alex signed everything. He didn't have much choice, considering the circumstances. And the charges? Regina got 5 years, Bethany got 2 years probation and community service. Alex got 3 years for identity theft and fraud. Maureen got probation and a hefty fine. Pierce shook his head. 15 years of marriage, and it ends with criminal charges. It ended the night they tried to steal from me, I corrected. Everything else was just paperwork. Leonard stood up, moving toward the door. I should go. I have a hotel room downtown until I can find an apartment. Leonard, I called after him. He turned back. Thank you for the note, for trying to warn me, for everything. He nodded. Take care of yourself, Remington. You deserve to be happy. After he left, Amy and Pierce helped me clean up the library. We threw away the torn divorce papers and scattered photographs, swept up the broken crystal, put the furniture back in order. So what now? Pierce asked as we finished. I looked around the room that had witnessed my humiliation and my triumph. Now I figure out what comes next. Any ideas? I smiled, feeling something light and free unfurling in my chest. A few. I'm thinking about turning the guest wing into an art studio, maybe taking those painting classes I always wanted to try. Sounds perfect, Amy said. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Congratulations on your victory. Some battles are worth fighting. A friend? I showed it to Amy, who frowned. Do you know who sent this? No, I said, but I was smiling. And I don't care. I deleted the message and slipped my phone back into my pocket. Whatever came next, whoever was watching, I was ready for it. For the first time in 15 years, I was exactly where I belonged. In my own house, surrounded by people who actually cared about me, with a future that was entirely my own to create. It was perfect.